The silent galaxy. For thousands of years, the galaxy was alive with noise. Alien empires fought endless wars, traded across the stars, and told stories of powers that once existed but had long vanished. Among those stories was a name spoken with both wonder and fear: humans. Some believed they were only myths, shadows invented to frighten children or to explain ancient ruins no one could understand. Others whispered that humans had been real, but they had disappeared so long ago that even their bones had turned to dust. The galaxy moved on without them. Civilizations rose and fell, but no one ever saw a human again. Planets burned, fleets clashed, and treaties were signed. And in all this chaos, the universe grew used to human silence. It was as if humanity had been erased from time itself. But silence has a weight. Silence can hide something deeper than words. And silence, if broken, can shake everything. On the far edges of known space, beyond the borders of the greatest empires, a listening station floated alone in the dark. It belonged to the Tsar Dominion, a proud race that ruled 1,000 systems. The station's job was simple: scan the void for signals, ships, or threats. For centuries, nothing unusual had appeared. Patrols were routine. Drones mapped the emptiness. Officers lived dull lives, watching stars burn cold light into endless black. Then one cycle, the silence broke. It began as a faint echo, a signal no one could trace. It did not match any code known to the Dominion or to any other empire. It was not natural, and yet it felt older than every empire combined. The officers stared at the screens in confusion. The signal was slow, like a heartbeat pulsing across the void. Every 23 seconds it repeated. An old pattern, something that felt almost alive. The captain of the station, a tired veteran named Solrek, frowned at the rhythm. His crew tried to dismiss it as cosmic noise, but Solrek shook his head. "No," he whispered. "This is not random. This is intention." The signal grew stronger, and then, from the depths of the dark, their sensors picked up a shape. At first they thought it was an asteroid, drifting in silence, but when light hit it, the shape revealed itself. A ship, a massive ancient ship. Its hull was scarred, its design unlike anything known to the galaxy. It had no lights, no engines burning, no signs of life. It drifted slowly like a ghost. The Dominion officers froze. They scanned the vessel again and again. Its size was greater than any warship in their fleets. Its armor was blackened but still intact. Symbols were carved into its surface, worn by time yet sharp enough to unsettle those who looked too long. Whispers spread across the crew. Some thought it was a relic from an extinct empire. Others feared it was a weapon abandoned in space. But Solrek stood silent, staring at the ship with eyes that refused to blink. Finally, he spoke. "This is human." No one answered him at first. The word itself felt dangerous, like calling a ghost by name. But in their archives, buried deep in forgotten texts, were fragments of descriptions, old broken records that spoke of human vessels. Silent, enormous, and built not for beauty but for dominance. The crew grew restless. Some begged to send word to the Dominion capital. Others wanted to leave the station and abandon this sector entirely. Solrek denied both. "We do not run from shadows. We watch, we learn. If this is human, then history itself has awakened." The ghost ship continued its slow approach. It did not signal. It did not change course. It simply drifted closer, as though drawn by invisible threads. When its shadow finally fell across the station, every light flickered. Systems failed, then restarted. The crew panicked. The ship had not fired a single weapon, but its presence alone was enough to break their machines. Inside the vessel, their scans found something stranger still. No life signs, no power signatures. The ship was dead, and yet it moved. The silence grew heavier. Some swore they heard faint whispers in their minds when they stared at the vessel too long. A wordless pressure, an echo of something vast and waiting. For hours, the Dominion officers debated what to do. Destroy it? Impossible. Their weapons would barely scratch the surface. Capture it? Dangerous beyond reason. Leave it? Their pride would not allow retreat. In the end, Solrek made the choice. "We will board it," the crew gasped. But the captain's eyes were steady. "If this is human, we must know. If we turn away, others will come. Better to face it now." A boarding party was prepared. Suits sealed, weapons armed. Fear spread through them like fire, but duty kept them moving. The docking clamps locked onto the ghost ship's side. The first team entered through a broken airlock. Darkness swallowed them whole. Their lights cut through empty halls lined with walls of strange metal. Dust floated like ash, untouched for ages. Every step echoed like thunder in the silence. Then they saw it. On the walls, written in a language no alien had ever spoken, were symbols. Symbols that their translators struggled to decode. After long moments, a single phrase appeared on their screens. We were silent. Now we return. The message repeated, etched again and again, covering the walls as though it were the only thing the ship remembered. The boarding team froze. Their breaths echoed in their helmets. None dared to speak. Far away in the control room, Captain Solrek read the translation and felt his blood turn cold. The myths were true. The silence was ending, and the galaxy had no idea what was about to awaken. The ghost awakens. The boarding team moved deeper into the vessel. Their lights showed broken corridors, twisted steel, and dust that seemed too heavy for airless space. Every sound of their boots echoed back at them like the ship was alive and listening. The words carved on the walls, "We were silent. Now we return," appeared in more places. Some were burned into the metal, others scratched by hand as if someone had written them again and again in desperation. The leader of the team, Officer Kryn, tried to calm his people. "Stay close. Record everything. Do not touch anything." But even his voice shook inside the helmet. They reached a central chamber. Unlike the rest of the ship, this place was not broken. It was preserved, almost sacred. At the center stood a large pod covered with frost. Strange cables connected it to the walls, pulsing faint light that flickered like a heartbeat. "Life support," whispered one of the soldiers. The scanners confirmed what no one wanted to believe. Inside the pod was a figure. A body, human. The aliens had never seen one before, but old myths described them well. Tall, broad-shouldered, skin pale from stasis, eyes closed as if asleep. The figure looked fragile, but every part of the ship seemed to protect it. Fear spread through the team. Some wanted to leave at once. Others begged to open fire, but Kryn raised a hand. "No, this is history. We do not destroy history." From the control room of the station, Captain Solrek watched the live feed. His face was pale, his eyes locked on the pod. "Do not touch it," he ordered. "Record and withdraw." But before the team could respond, the pod's lights brightened. The frost cracked. A hiss of gas filled the chamber. The figure inside stirred. The aliens froze. Their weapons shook in their hands. No one breathed. Then the humans' eyes opened. They were not like alien eyes. No color, no softness. They glowed faintly, cold and sharp like fragments of a dying star. The man took a slow breath, and the pod released him. He stepped forward, his movements heavy but filled with strength that made the aliens step back in fear. He looked around the chamber. His gaze fell on the aliens. For a long moment he said nothing. The silence was heavier than before. Then, in a voice that seemed to echo inside their minds rather than their ears, he spoke. "You broke the silence." The soldiers trembled. Some dropped their weapons. Others raised them higher, their fear stronger than orders. Kryn tried to speak, but his throat closed. The human tilted his head, studying them like creatures from another world. His voice came again, calm and unhurried. "How long has it been?" The aliens could not answer. Their translators did not work, yet somehow they understood him. Every word pressed directly into their thoughts. The human's expression changed. Sadness, then anger, then something darker. He looked around at the ship's walls, at the message written everywhere. "We waited too long," he whispered. At that moment, the ship came alive. Light spread through the corridors. Systems that had been dead for centuries hummed back into motion. Energy pulsed through the walls like blood returning to veins. The alien team panicked, shouting into their radios, begging to return. Captain Solrek yelled through the comms, "Get out! Return to the station." But the ship did not allow it. Doors sealed. Gravity shifted. The aliens were trapped inside. The human raised one hand and the lights dimmed. His presence filled the room like a storm that could not be escaped. He spoke again, his voice carrying across both the chamber and the station beyond. "Humans never vanished. We chose silence. We chose to sleep. But you woke us. And now?" His eyes narrowed and the walls glowed with the same light as his gaze. "The galaxy will remember." Every screen on the station flickered. A signal burst from the ghost ship, spreading into the void. It was not a message in words, but in power. Beacons across systems lit up. Long dormant machines in forgotten sectors came online. It was as if the awakening of one human had triggered something greater. The aliens outside panicked. Reports flooded in. Nearby fleets were losing contact, their systems disrupted by the signal. Civilizations across the border worlds were receiving the same strange broadcast. The words translated into every known language. We were silent. Now we return. Inside the ship, the boarding team backed away, their fear growing with every step. The human did not move to harm them, but his presence was enough. It felt like standing before a predator who had chosen not to strike. Yet, Kryn whispered into his calm, voice shaking, "Captain, he is only one man, and still I feel like we are ants before fire." The human's head turned slowly, his eyes meeting Kryn's, and though he had not heard the words, it was clear he understood. A faint smile crossed his lips, not of joy but of something older. "You are right," he said. "One is enough." The chamber fell into silence again. The alien soldiers stood frozen, caught between terror and awe, and above them, across the galaxy, the ghost signal kept spreading, calling out to places no one had dared explore. The silence of humanity had ended, and the galaxy had just taken its first step into fear. The message of fire, the ghost signal, did not stop. It spread like fire through the void, touching systems that had long forgotten the name of man. Every empire's communication lines trembled as the message echoed again and again in every tongue. We were silent. Now we return. In the Dominion capital, leaders gathered in panic. High councils shouted at each other, some demanding fleets be sent to destroy the source, others insisting it was only a trick, an old machine repeating an old warning. But none could ignore the fear that clung to the words. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy was united, not in peace, but in dread. Back aboard the ghost ship, the alien soldiers remained trapped. The human stood before them like a shadow of war. His presence weighed heavier with each passing moment. Though he had spoken few words, it was enough to shatter the illusion that humanity was gone. One soldier, trembling with both courage and fear, stepped forward. His voice cracked as he asked, "What do you want from us?" The human's gaze was cold. He did not shout, but his voice carried like thunder inside their skulls. "What do I want?" "Nothing. What do we want?" "Memory." He pointed upward, as if beyond the ceiling, beyond the stars themselves. "You forgot us. You grew arrogant. You filled the void with your wars and your councils, but you forgot the name of man. And now we remind you." The alien soldier fell silent. None dared to speak again. Then the ship itself moved. Slowly, impossibly, it turned in the void. No engines fired, no thrusters burned, yet the stars shifted outside its windows. It aligned itself toward the core of Dominion space, and then its hull split open. From within, massive structures unfolded like wings. Antenna towers rose, glowing with energy no alien could name. The boarding team staggered back as the chamber walls pulsed with light, their weapons shaking in useless hands. On the station outside, alarms screamed. "Captain!" an officer cried. "The ship is preparing a transmission of unimaginable scale. It will hit every system in the galaxy." Solrek's face turned pale. He knew then that this was not a ghost ship. It was a weapon, a messenger, a signal made of fire. The human raised his hand. In that instant, the transmission began. A beam of energy brighter than suns shot across the stars. It was not just light. It was information carved into waves of fire. Entire archives hidden in the ship's memory were released, pouring into every corner of the galaxy. Civilizations awoke to images forced into their skies. Visions of ancient battles fought by humans, empires crushed under their fleets, worlds bending beneath their power. Aliens across the stars saw the same thing. Thousands of ships darkening skies, soldiers marching with eyes of fire, worlds turned silent under human hands. It was not a message of peace. It was a warning. The galaxy was reminded in a single instant of what humanity had been. And the message was clear. We are back. On the Dominion station, officers collapsed to their knees, some clutching their heads as the visions burned inside their minds. Others screamed, unable to separate memory from reality. Even Captain Solrek, hardened by war, felt his hands tremble. He whispered the words like a prayer. "This is not a warning. This is a promise." Inside the ghost ship, The alien boarding team saw the human soldier glow faintly as though the power of the ship moved through him. He looked at them with calm eyes. "You see now," he said. "This is only the first voice. The others will follow." The aliens stared, terrified. Kryn, the leader, forced his voice to work. "The others, you mean? There are more ships like this." The human did not answer. His silence was worse than words. Outside, the Dominion capital screamed with chaos. Some leaders shouted for war. Others cried that surrender was the only way. A few whispered that perhaps they could ally with humans, learn their secrets, survive under their shadow. But none could ignore the terror that now ruled the galaxy. The transmission ended. The ghost ship sealed its wings. Darkness returned, but the damage was done. Billions of minds had been marked by the vision. Billions now knew that humanity was not dead. Humanity was waiting. Captain Solrek stared at the silent vessel on his screen. His officers begged him to order an attack, to destroy it before it moved again. But he only shook his head. His voice was heavy, filled with truth he could not escape. "No weapon we have can touch that ship. We are only children before it." On the alien vessel's floor, one soldier whispered words that would spread across the galaxy. They were silent. Now they return. And in the core of the ghost ship, far beyond the eyes of the Dominion, machines stirred. Stasis pods deep in hidden chambers hissed with cold vapor. Figures shifted inside, their outlines human. The awakening had only begun. The silent armies. The galaxy did not sleep after the signal. Entire worlds were restless. People looked at the skies with fear, waiting for shapes to appear in the stars. In every empire, in every council, one question echoed again and again. How many are there? The Dominion fleets were the first to respond. Warships were launched to surround the ghost ship, thousands of them gathering like hunters around a wounded beast. Their commanders believed numbers would give them courage. Yet even as they approached, they felt the weight of something greater pressing down on them. Captain Solrek stood in the command deck of his station, watching the growing armada. His officers whispered nervously, their eyes fixed on the ghost ship. Solrek did not speak. He knew deep inside that it would not matter how many warships came. The galaxy had already lost. Then the darkness shifted. Far beyond the ghost ship, at the edge of sensors, more signals appeared. At first they were faint, but soon they grew stronger, hundreds of shapes breaking through the void. No engines burned, no communication codes were shared. They simply emerged, one after another, like shadows crawling out of eternity. When the first of them came close, the truth became clear. These were not Dominion ships. These were not from any empire. They were human. Their designs were vast, terrifying in their silence. Some looked like mountains torn from planets, reshaped into vessels. Others stretched like blades of metal, sharp and endless. Their surfaces were dark, scarred and ancient, but their presence filled every alien heart with dread. The Dominion fleet locked weapons. Thousands of cannons prepared to fire. But before any order was given, the ghost ship pulsed with light again. Its voice echoed across space, not in words, but in a command that every human vessel obeyed. The silent armies had arrived. The new ships moved into formation around the ghost vessel, surrounding it like soldiers guarding their general. They did not fire. They did not speak. They simply watched, waiting. On the Dominion warships, panic spread. Some captains demanded to attack at once. Others begged to retreat. But confusion ruled them all. How could they fight an enemy that did not even raise its weapons? Inside the ghost ship, the human soldier walked slowly through the corridors, the alien boarding team following in terror. He placed his hand on the walls and the ship responded to his touch. Doors opened, lights flickered, machines stirred. His eyes glowed brighter, like stars burning in his veins. He turned to Kryn, the alien officer who had dared to speak before. "You ask how many we are," the human said. "You ask why we return." His voice was calm, but it carried the weight of storms. "We slept while you built your empires. We watched while you filled the void with your wars. But now you have forgotten fear. That is why we rise again." Kryn whispered, shaking. "What will you do?" The human's expression did not change. "Remind you." At that moment, the silent armies revealed themselves. Across the galaxy, hidden machines that had slept for millennia began to stir. On forgotten moons, black pyramids unfolded into war engines. In dead systems, stars shifted as giant structures moved from behind them. In deep space, more ships emerged, their hulls older than most civilizations still alive. The message was undeniable. Humanity had never been destroyed. They had buried themselves in silence, scattering their fleets and their armies across the stars, waiting for the moment to rise again. On the Dominion capital world, riots erupted. Citizens screamed that the end had come. Religious leaders declared the humans gods of death, returning to punish the living. Some governments collapsed in a single night, their rulers too afraid to face what was coming. And yet still the humans did not attack. That silence was worse than any weapon. Every empire waited for fire, for destruction, but nothing came. The ships only watched, waiting as if testing the galaxy's courage. On the Dominion fleet, one young commander could not endure the tension. "They are only ghosts," he shouted. He ordered his warship to open fire. Beams of energy cut through the dark and struck one of the human vessels. The explosion lit the void for a moment, only to fade uselessly against the ancient hull. When the smoke cleared, the human ship was untouched. Then, with no visible weapon, the alien warship shattered. No sound, no warning. One instant it was whole. The next it was fragments drifting in silence. Every other Dominion ship froze. The crews held their breath. No one dared to move again. The human soldier turned his gaze toward the stars. His voice whispered through every channel, carried by the ghost signal into every corner of the galaxy. This was only one. Imagine when we march. The silent armies stood ready, countless and endless. They did not roar. They did not burn worlds. But their silence itself was enough to crush the galaxy with fear. Captain Solrek closed his eyes. His people begged him for orders, but he knew none would matter. The galaxy had entered a new age, the age of humanity's return. And somewhere deep in his heart he feared that silence had only been the beginning. The return of humanity. The galaxy had seen wars before. Empires had risen and fallen, fleets had burned, and stars had died in fire. But this was different. The return of humanity was not a war. It was a shadow spreading across every system, a silence heavier than death. The silent armies hung above the stars, motionless, countless. They did not attack. They did not speak. They simply existed, and their existence alone was enough to break the courage of entire civilizations. In the Dominion capital, the High Council sat in fear. Maps glowed before them, showing the positions of the human fleets. They were everywhere, along the borders, near trade routes, deep in forgotten sectors. More ships appeared every hour, their numbers beyond calculation. One counselor whispered, "If they wanted to destroy us, they would have done it already." Another replied, trembling, "Then why are they waiting?" No one answered, because no one knew. On the ghost ship, the human soldier stood at the heart of the vessel. The alien boarding team watched him, powerless, their weapons useless in their hands. His eyes burned brighter now, glowing like two small suns. The walls around him pulsed with life, and the message echoed again. We were silent. Now we return. Kryn, his voice shaking but still brave, asked the question that haunted every mind in the galaxy. Why now? Why after so many years of silence? The human looked at him for a long moment and then spoke in a voice colder than the void. Because you forgot. The word struck like a blade. He continued. You forgot fear. You forgot the balance. You built your empires, your fleets, your arrogance, and you believed the stars belonged to you. But they never belonged to you. They belong to us, and now we take them back. As his words fell into the silence, the ships outside moved. Slowly, like a tide, the silent armies shifted formation. Hundreds of thousands of vessels aligned as if answering a command too vast for alien minds to grasp. Their shadows covered entire sectors of space, blotting out starlight. On the Dominion fleet, panic erupted. Some captains abandoned formation, fleeing into hyperspace without orders. Others begged for peace, broadcasting messages of surrender into the void. None received a reply. Then the first world saw them arrive. A colony near the edge of Dominion space woke to the sight of human ships filling the skies. No attack came, no weapons fired, but every screen, every sky, every whisper carried the same vision. The burning eyes of the human soldier, his voice in every language. We were silent. Now we return. On that world, billions fell to their knees. Some prayed. Some screamed. Some took their own lives in fear of what would come, and yet still no fire fell. This was the terror, the waiting, the silence. The knowledge that destruction could come at any moment but had not yet arrived. Humanity had turned the galaxy into a prisoner of its own fear. Inside the ghost ship, the alien soldiers could take no more. One dropped to his knees before the human. His voice cracked. "Please, what do you want from us?" The human's expression softened for the first time. He looked not angry, not cruel, but infinite, like someone who had seen ages pass and had waited too long. "What we want," he said quietly, "is to remind you that the galaxy is not yours to rule. It is ours to shape, ours to command, and yours to survive if we allow it." The silence after his words was worse than screams. Then, as if to prove the point, the silent armies moved again. This time, entire sectors went dark. Fleets lost contact, stars dimmed as massive constructs eclipsed them. The galaxy shook under the weight of their presence. And still, only one human had spoken. Captain Solrek, watching from his station, whispered what every living being now knew. "This is not the beginning of war. This is the end of history." The human soldier raised his gaze to the stars. His final words carried across every system, every empire, every frightened heart. For millennia we were silent, but silence is over, and as the words faded, the silent armies advanced, a tide of shadow and fire moving toward the heart of the galaxy. The return of humanity had begun.